Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you're new to my channel and you like my content, then please hit the subscribe button. I'd love to have you. And for my returning subscribers, hello and welcome. First of all, today I am excited because truly I think fall is finally making it to the south. It's a beautiful day out. It's sunshiny. It's in the 70s. I have the windows open, and just to see the breeze blowing the curtains in the air and just feeling that nice cool breeze is just a true blessing. I've been waiting for a long time. My internal clock seems to be a bit off because I am a four-season person. I do love the fall, my favorite. I love winter. Summer is honestly my least favorite. I'm just not a person that likes the heat, but I made it through and I am still battling a bit of a sinus infection. I'm getting better, but if my voice goes out, I apologize. Today, I want to talk about one of my favorite dishes to make, and that is, not that, mac and cheese. Look at that mac and cheese. It's ooey, gooey, and delicious. Is there anything more comforting and more heartwarming and just that creaminess and ooziness and just a great bowl of mac and cheese any time of year? Also, just a little tidbit of information. I just kind of looked up a couple of things and I found this little clipping that stated mac and cheese was basically popularized by Thomas Jefferson. I believe on one of his trips to Europe, France and Italy, he became acquainted with pasta and what their version of mac and cheese was. So I guess he had some sort of pasta maker sent over to his home, and I think a family member, I'm not sure what the relation was, I don't know if it was a daughter or a sister or whatever, but started to make this dish, mac and cheese, and it became very popular. So I know there's a lot of stories about who wants to take credit for starting mac and cheese. Oh, sorry. Still having some sinus issues. I'm so sorry. So there's all kinds of stories that you can come across just about the history of mac and cheese and really who wants to take credit for it. Is it our southern neighbors who really make the best, most famous mac and cheese? Is the story of Thomas Jefferson accurate and true about bringing it over to the States and starting the feature of mac and cheese? But no matter where you go or where you're traveling, I can assure you that there is a place somewhere where you're going that you can find some great mac and cheese. And I know that when we travel or go anywhere, I always look for it as a specialty on a menu. And I always ask, is this homemade mac and cheese or is this a box mix? Because I really want to try all the different flavors and varieties that somebody puts out of mac and cheese. And honestly, I have to say, in the end, I crave my mac and cheese. I'm just going to share a quick little story with you, and then I'm going to tell you about a couple of my little secrets to making mac and cheese that I think make it just an absolute creamy, delicious meal. First of all, several years ago, my niece and nephew, because they're grown up now, were traveling with their mom and dad out of state, and they happened to be visiting family in the state where my husband and I lived, and so of course they made a stop to come visit us. And so for them coming to visit with us, I made a dinner, and it was mac and cheese. And with the mac and cheese, I had a nice big garden salad and some French bread and applesauce and mac and cheese. And I think the kids they're twins, a boy and a girl, and I think they were probably about, I don't know, I want to say 6 or 7. So I wasn't really sure how the macaroni and cheese was going to go over with them because everybody pretty much loves mac and cheese, but we're talking mac and cheese in a box. Most kids absolutely love it. Wasn't sure if they were going to go for this souped up kind of gourmet mac and cheese. Well, I later became known as the mac and cheese auntie lady, because those kids ate that macaroni and cheese like there was no tomorrow and seconds, and they loved it. And so I was referred to as the macaroni and cheese auntie. And to me, that is a compliment. I don't think that there's anything that's as good as a piping hot, bubbling, creamy bowl of mac and cheese. And I'm going to share my recipe with you. And I did a video on the mac and cheese, just kind of putting it together. It is simple, it's basic, but I think there's a couple of ingredients and things that I do that really make the mac and cheese just over the top. And of course, I was making this, and it was for a family dinner a while back, and I had my family coming for dinner, and I film the little steps, and then when it comes time to showing the end result and plating it up, I forget to film it. So I did get a picture of the next day having leftovers, and but I wanted to show you what it looked like coming out of the oven, and I think I missed that part of it because you know how it is when you have family over and they're ready to eat and hungry. So before I share the video with you, the macaroni and cheese base that I use is a basic roux, and the roux is made with flour, butter, and a mixture of milk. You can use whole milk, 2% milk. I wouldn't go any lower than that because you really do want some of that fat texture. And I also mix a little bit of half and half in it. Now, the cheese is totally up to you. For the amount of liquid that I use in the mac and cheese and the cups of shredded cheese, whatever cheese your preference is, I kind of do a cleaning out in my refrigerator, and I'll use what I have in the fridge. Now, if I'm making a planned macaroni and cheese, it's a little different because then I go for specific cheeses that we all love the combination of. If I'm just cleaning out the refrigerator and I have a little bit of cheddar cheese, a little bit of Swiss cheese, a little bit of this or that, then I'll just make a quick, let's do a mac and cheese and use up this particular cheese. But my all-time favorite to use in the mac and cheese is smoked Gouda and sharp cheddar. We love that combination. I have used so many varieties of cheeses in the mac and cheese, and it's always good, it's always delicious. It just has a different flair to it. I sometimes use goat cheese in my mac and cheese. It just all depends, like I said, what I'm using the mac and cheese up for, to get rid of cheese that I already have, or is it for a planned meal that I'm having family over and I'm going to do mac and cheese, then I probably will go and get the cheeses that are our favorites. So that's one important step. The second important step is after cooking the mac and cheese noodles, and I prefer the elbow pasta, and I like Barilla, that brand of pasta, but I like the elbow. I've done it with curlicues, I've done it with shells, I've used a variety of different types of pasta, but the elbow is our favorite. And I believe that this is an important step, and actually in any type of pasta that you're making, do not rinse the pasta once it's done cooking. What I do is I use a great big huge scooper that I have to pull the pasta out of the boiling water and put it into the casserole dish. I never rinse the pasta. That's an important step. And I like the pasta to come right from the pan into the bowl, into the casserole dish. And the other kind of trick that I do is, once I have the pasta all into my casserole dish, it doesn't matter if I'm going to make 2 casserole dishes out of 1 pound or just one big casserole dish. I always reserve about a cup to cup and a half of that pasta water. Just in case the cheese is a little bit thicker than I want, I can dilute it down with that pasta water. And then once the pasta is in the casserole dish, I like to take my extra virgin olive oil, a really, really good extra virgin olive oil, and sprinkle it on top of the pasta and just mix it up in the casserole dish. And at that point, I actually put a layering of seasoning, which is pepper, salt, and sometimes just a little bit of garlic. I just don't want it to be overwhelming though with garlic, but just a little bit. And I just kind of mix it up on top of that hot pasta. So olive oil keeps the pasta so that it just doesn't clump together, and it just keeps it nice, and it gives it a great flavor. And I just set it aside in my casserole dish. And then the other important factor, I think, is when you're making a roux with butter and flour. I just kind of do a real basic roux, and for the amount of liquid that I use, I do 6 tablespoons of butter to a half a cup of flour. And the secret to that is to cook your flour. Oh, sorry, I might need a cough drop. My throat's getting dry. Cooking your roux is very important. When you melt the butter down, what I like to do is get the pan nice and hot, not scorching hot. I don't want to burn the butter, but just melt the butter down and sprinkle in your flour and whisk it around in your pan, and then sprinkle in more flour, whisk it around. Cook that combination of butter and flour for a good I don't know, 2 to 3 minutes, until it kind of takes on a little bit of a darker color, and it's bringing out the flavor of the butter, and it's just taking away the raw flavor of the flour. So that is really, really important. And you want to do that slowly so that you're not scorching the butter. And then once it's all incorporated and you've cooked it for a couple of minutes, then you can slowly start to add your liquid. And so those are, I think, important in making homemade macaroni and cheese. And I'm also going to tell you one of my most favorite secret weapons in the mac and cheese. Yep, here it comes, is Velveeta. Velveeta. Now, you might think, well, that doesn't really make it homemade. Yes, it does. It's a cheese. And what that Velveeta does to the liquid of the milk, it literally just gives it a very velvety consistency. And, you know, it adds flavor, but the most flavor you're going to get is from your other cheeses. So now Velveeta comes in the big, I think it's the 2-pound blocks, and then they come in the little miniature block. I use the miniature block, and for anywhere between 4 and 5 cups of liquid, I usually use 1 whole block. If I have a half of that only left in the refrigerator, that's what I use. Now, if you're wondering, do you ever make it without? Yes, I do. If I don't have it available and I want to make the macaroni and cheese, then I just use other cheeses. But I think that adds a step up in the texture of the macaroni and cheese. My family really loves it. And what I do is I just cut it up into cubes and then I melt it into my pot after I've incorporated the other cheeses. And it just really gives it a creamy, velvety texture. So I think those are some of the steps that I take in making macaroni and cheese. It's simple, it's easy, and I'm going to follow up with the little video clips that I took making and putting it together, and then I will post the basis for the mac and cheese recipe that I follow. Now, like I said, it's so simple and so basic that I can tell you I use a pound of pasta, usually elbow. I use between 4 and 5 cups of liquid. Now, I use milk and half in a combination. I've done it with all milk. I've done it with cream, but usually I use milk and half. The half gives it a little richer texture. Oh, and by the way, just to make sure it's clear, this is definitely not a diet macaroni and cheese. No, this is one full of richness and flavor and deliciousness, and it's not like you eat it every day, but it's great. So, back to the ingredients. As I said, I do salt and pepper my pasta after it's done cooking. I use a bit of dry mustard. I think it adds to the color and it gives it a little zip. And now, I have made it before by adding a little bit of hot sauce into the roux and stirring it around once I've incorporated all the liquids and the cheese, and then I add a little bit of Tabasco sauce, but not everybody prefers it, so we'll add it to our individual dishes if we want to add a little hot sauce. And then I add that's the basis of it. So it's basically pasta, milk, half and half, seasonings, which includes salt, pepper, a little bit of a mustard, dried powder. Sometimes I add sour cream. Sometimes I take sour cream and an egg and mix it all together, and then I take the roux out, a cup maybe, let it cool a little bit, add all that sour cream, put it back into the roux. What that does is it gives the mac and cheese a little bit of zip from the sour cream, and the egg kind of makes it just not so heavy and weighty and a little bit fluffier. But I don't necessarily do that all the time. It just depends. And I think my video clip shows, I wanted to just show you how I incorporate that. So I made it that particular time with the sour cream and egg. So like I said, there's just such a variety, and I always put a topping on my mac and cheese because my family likes it, and it's one of two. It's either the Kikkoman breadcrumbs or it's the Ritz crushed crackers. And what I do is just crush up the crackers, spread it on the top, or if I'm using the Kikkoman plain crumbs, I just put them on the top, and then I take a couple of tablespoons of butter, melt it down, and pour it over the top, and it just gives a little bit of crunch to the top. And then I bake it in the oven, 350, uncovered, until you can see the bubbling of the cheese and everything on the sides, and the cheese starts to turn just slightly brown. And man, when it's done, it's awesome. So I'm going to go ahead and insert the video and just kind of show you my steps, and I will I'll insert at the bottom my basic recipe that I use. And I hope you get a chance to make this. I hope you love it. So first things first, I have some smoked Gouda. Creamy Gouda here, right here, and some smoked extra sharp cheddar cheese, and I have grated it, and I usually start with about between 3.5 to 4 cups of grated cheese combination. Sometimes if I have some goat cheese, I add that, but these are the two cheeses that I'm going to use today. And I'm starting out with 4 cups of milk, and it's not whole milk, it's 2%, that's what I use, and I usually will even add maybe up to another cup. And I make my roux with 4 sticks of butter, 4 tablespoons of flour, and I'm using elbow macaroni. I also add 1 egg and about a half a cup to 3/4 of a cup of sour cream that I stir together, and then I'll mix it into the roux once my roux is made with the milk, and it's kind of not super hot because I don't want the sour cream to curdle. And then I'll show you it when I put it all together. Over low heat, I have incorporated my butter that I melted slowly and added a flour, which I'm cooking now, so that the flour doesn't maintain such a raw taste to it. And so I'm just going to brown it a little bit till it gets just a little bit deeper in color. And I have also added just a pinch of pepper and just a tiny pinch of paprika. I don't put salt in at this point because the cheese that I add to the macaroni and cheese actually base is pretty salty. So I'll bring the heat up a little bit before I start to add the milk, but I'm going to incorporate that into this very slowly. So here's my pasta cooked al dente, and I'm just using this nice big scooper right out of the pan and putting in the first layer, ooh, sorry, it's pretty smoky, steamy rather, into my casserole dish. And this is the casserole dish that I pretty much use all the time for my mac and cheese. Once I get that first layer in, then I'm going to season it a little bit with black pepper, paprika, and I really lay off the salt because the cheese is really salty. I add a tidbit, oops, so sorry, a tidbit more of good olive oil, EVOO, as Rachel Ray would say. And then I just do another little layer of the pasta and hit it again with some black pepper, paprika, and olive oil. This time I'll just go ahead and sprinkle a little more of that olive oil on. That adds such good yumminess. So another tip is I like to save some of the pasta water, because if I need to thin down this mixture a bit, if I think once I put it into the casserole dish that it's too thick, then I'll add a little bit of this pasta water, and it's flavored great with, you know, because it has that salt, and that's why I don't add more salt to the dish. Ooh, this is kind of hard to do, one hand and one hand on the camera. So this is the roux and the melted cheese incorporated now into the casserole dish, and I'll scrape all that good yumminess right into it. And now I am just slowly incorporating and mixing all of this good yumminess up. And I know there's times where, and it looks like I don't need to add any pasta water because this looks like the right consistency for the amount of pasta, and I used just short of a pound because I had probably used maybe about a half a cup that I was making something else, and so this wasn't a full true pound of elbow macaroni, just maybe short, maybe 3/4 of a cup. And so that's what that looks like once everything gets incorporated. And now I'll add the top. Okay guys, and this is what it looks like right before I stick it in the oven. It'll get nice and bubbly and crusty around the edges, just the way we like it, and it'll be ooey and gooey on the inside. So hope you will try this recipe. And the noodles that are just on the top are just a little bit that was left at the bottom of the pan. So after I drained the water out, I just went ahead and sprinkled those on top. And I'm just going to add one more little final touch, and that's a little bit more black pepper, because we like black pepper. I will put it in the oven, 350 degrees, for about 20-25 minutes uncovered until it's bubbly on the edges and golden brown, and it is ooey gooey on the inside. I think you'll like it, so give it a try. So here's a picture of my lunch the next day, my mac and cheese, because I forgot to take a picture of it before serving. And this particular mac and cheese dish, I did not have the Velveeta as I was out, but you can see it still looks yummy. But that really is the tip-top secret to making some creamy, creamy mac and cheese.